So here's the big question we're tackling today. Why hasn't the world really lined up behind India's accusations against Pakistan, especially regarding that terrible attack in Pahalgam and then, Operation Sindoor?
It's a real puzzle, isn't it? And we've got this RMN News article that, well, it dives right into that. It specifically looks at comments from Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge.
Right.
And for you listening, if you want to get a handle on these complex situations quickly, this piece offers a pretty critical viewpoint on what might be going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we'll use the article to unpack Kharge's critique of India's foreign policy, look at why international support seems, well, limited.
The diplomatic push India made.
Yeah, those all-party delegations. And then Pakistan's side, the denial, their call for an independent investigation.
And maybe the biggest point, the apparent lack of hard evidence presented publicly by India.
That seems key. So our mission today is really to analyze these arguments from the RMN piece and try to understand the core issues here. Why isn't India getting the backing it might have expected?
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with Kharge's criticism. He had some strong words about India's foreign policy, didn't he?
He really did. He points out, all of the foreign travel by Prime Minister Modi, 151 trips?
To 72 countries, yeah, over 11 years, including 10 trips just to the U.S.
Right. And Kharge basically asks, okay, with all that FaceTime, all that diplomacy, why isn't there more concrete support when India levels serious terror accusations against Pakistan? What's the return on investment, so to speak?
It's a provocative question. It implies, perhaps, that these trips should translate directly into support on specific security issues. But international relations, well, they're rarely that simple, are they?
No, definitely not.
Countries have their own interests, their own calculations. It's not always a straightforward quid pro quo based on visits.
Kharge also connects this to the IMF bailout for Pakistan, that $1.4 billion loan. He seems to be highlighting a kind of paradox.
Right. How can the world lend money to a country India is accusing of sponsoring terror?
It does look contradictory on the surface.
It really shows the complexity, though. Sometimes economic stability is seen as crucial for a region, even alongside security concerns. The IMF, its main job is economic assessment, not counterterrorism judgment. They look at financial viability.
That makes sense. Kharge also mentioned the ceasefire, the recent one, and former President Trump claiming he brokered it.
Yes, and Kharge apparently criticized Modi for not really clarifying India's position on those claims by Trump.
Implying maybe it made India look like it needed the U.S. to step in.
Potentially. That's likely the criticism. India has always pushed for bilateral talks with Pakistan, keeping third parties out. So accepting a U.S.-brokered ceasefire, well, critics like Kharge might see that as undermining that long-held stance, sort of opens the door to outside involvement.
Okay, let's pivot to the specific events. The Pahalgam attack and Operation Sindoor. The attack itself, April 22nd, 2025, just devastating, 26 lives lost.
Truly tragic. And then about 2 weeks later, May 7th, India launches Operation Sindoor.
And this is where things get contentious, according to the article. India points the finger squarely at Pakistan for Pahalgam.
But, and this is crucial, the article stresses that this accusation came without public proof. No concrete evidence was apparently shared.
Right, and Pakistan's reaction.
A very strong denial, completely rejected any involvement. And interestingly, they actually proposed an independent investigation.
Oh, how would that work?
They suggested it could be under the UN, maybe, or even involve the U.S., basically let impartial observers look into the Pahalgam attack.
That's a significant offer. Seems like a way to clear their name, if they're innocent.
You'd think so. But the RMN article points out that India rejected this proposal, said no to any kind of impartial investigation.
Which in itself might raise some eyebrows internationally.
It certainly could. Refusing scrutiny can sometimes be interpreted negatively, fair or not.
Now, India did try to build support diplomatically, didn't it? The article mentions these all-party delegations.
Yeah, quite a big effort. 7 delegations, 59 MPs in total, from different parties.
Wow. Where did they go?
They visited 32 countries, plus the EU. The mission was clear. Promote India's anti-terror stance and explain or justify Operation Sindoor.
Sending delegations with members from different parties, that sends a signal of unity, I suppose.
Exactly. It's designed to show the international community that this isn't just one party's position, but a national consensus, or at least present it that way.
But despite all that effort, the RMN piece argues it didn't really translate into widespread international backing for India's specific claims against Pakistan in this instance.
That seems to be the core argument. Critics are saying, look, where's the verifiable proof linking Pakistan to these specific recent attacks? Without that public evidence.
While nations hesitate.
Precisely. International norms generally require pretty solid evidence-based accusations before countries take strong stances, especially on sensitive security matters between nuclear-armed neighbors. It's a high bar.
The article brings up the IMF again, and also FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, saying these bodies haven't backed up India's current claims either.
Right. The FATF is important here. It's the global watchdog for terror financing and money laundering.
And Pakistan was on their gray list for a while, wasn't it?
It was, but they were removed in 2022. That removal signaled that Pakistan had supposedly made significant progress in tackling these issues, enough to satisfy the international body.
So India accusing them now, after that delisting, it complicates things.
It does. It runs counter to the narrative established by the FATF's decision just a couple of years prior. It makes the international community perhaps more skeptical without new, compelling evidence.
This leads into another angle. The article explores the idea of political motivation, a serious claim.
Very serious. The criticism reported is that the government, maybe some media too, consistently labels Pakistan a terrorist state without always providing the necessary proof.
And the alleged reason.
To rally domestic support, specifically playing to Hindu nationalist sentiments. That's the argument presented by critics in the article.
And they point to the name Operation Sindoor.
Yes, Sindoor is a very significant symbol in Hinduism. Using it to name a military operation, critics argue, deliberately links national security with religious sentiment, potentially for political gain.
The article also mentions PM Modi saying India taught Pakistan a lesson.
It does, but it immediately contrasts that with a counter-narrative suggesting India actually suffered significant losses and that Pakistan might have even had the upper hand in some exchanges.
So completely different pictures of the same events.
Which is common in conflict, but this reported divergence between the official story and other accounts can definitely affect credibility both at home and abroad. Transparency becomes really important.
Okay, let's circle back to that U.S. brokered ceasefire mentioned earlier. How did critics view India accepting it, according to the article?
As a sign of weakness, potentially, and a major departure from that principle of bilateralism only dealing with Pakistan directly.
And the consequence?
Apparently, it's fueled calls for more international involvement, not just ceasefires, but maybe even mediation on the whole Kashmir issue.
Which is something India strongly resisted for decades.
Exactly. So accepting the ceasefire, in this view, might have inadvertently opened a door India wanted to keep firmly shut. It suggests to some that the current approach isn't working as intended.
And finally, the article mentions a petition.
Yes, a petition urging the UN Security Council to step in. The key argument cited is this lack of concrete evidence from India and the danger of escalation without an evidence-based approach.
Pushing for facts over rhetoric, essentially.
That's the gist. In international disputes, especially ones this tense, verifiable facts are usually seen as the foundation needed for de-escalation and resolution. Without them, it's hard to get broad international buy-in.
Okay, so let's try to summarize the main takeaways from this RMN News perspective. We've got this apparent lack of strong international support for India's claims.
Conflicting stories about the Pahalgam attack and Operation Sindoor.
A real focus on the absence of publicly available evidence from India.
And these questions being raised, by critics at least, about India's foreign policy effectiveness and the possible political motivations behind the accusations.
Right. And for you listening, trying to make sense of these complex global events, this case really highlights something important, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows how difficult it can be to navigate conflicting information, competing narratives from different countries.
You really have to look closely, question sources, and search for that evidence-based analysis. You can't just take official statements at face value sometimes.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is key.
So, maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. We're surrounded by information, often conflicting, especially during international crises. How can we as individuals best assess the validity of claims made by nations? What tools or approaches are most reliable when trying to find the truth or something close to it in these situations?
That's a really crucial question to ponder as we all try to navigate this complex world.